Ladies and gentlemen, when they begin. One foot in the fairy tale, the other foot in the toilet bowl, at the crossroads of consciousness. Having realized nothing in or about this world is what it seems, and neither am I, and neither are you, and neither is Jordan Maxwell, who played a part in bringing me to this junction, wondering which signpost is guiding me in the right direction, and did I take the wrong road in the first place, and should I stay on Main Street as humanity goes viral? It's a thought for an autumnal afternoon before the second wave hits. And that was just the begin. The polishing of the crown. Only the best for the best. You can't crack, Lizzie. You can't crack, you can't flinch, and you can't crack. There's only one queen. No crack must ever appear. One crack and the whole thing falls apart. Some sagely delivered advice to the monarch from her younger sister Margaret as she slumps slovenly back in her post-suicidal attempting sultry negligee, gin and cigarettes, sudden bedridden, tragic if privileged mess. Margaret, not the queen. It's a telling scene, eminently acted out, lavishly butlered into dramatic fact or fiction. Who knows, who cares anymore? It may well have happened exactly like that. When like becomes is, was, and ever shall be. At least as long as Netflix stays in business anyway. Always available for reruns should we ever doubt our own eyes, ears, and bumps of daisies. Let's face it, somebody has to stand strong amid all this chaos, as younger siblings and humanity itself seems to be falling apart. The whole thing, not just Princess Maggie, England itself, the great British nation, the empire, the Commonwealth, the taxpayer funding, the illusion of royalty, their privilege cover blown wide open, the world, the golden bowl, or even worse, this Crown's fictional series' intentional underpinning through line, the sheer resilience of withholding your cracks or covering them over with polished corn plasters. Light entertainment after a dreary day in the darkness. Grace under pressure, or in Princess Margaret's case, disgrace under pressure. Thank God she's not the Queen. Though the implication is she behaves disgracefully because she's never really been put under pressure except not to behave disgracefully, which, as we all know, is a real incitement to rebel. Given she can't be the first fiddle or second fiddle to get any attention at all, she needs to play quite a few wrong notes. There's a similar justifying, merely human goings-on explanation for the cold, calculating demeanour of the Queen's consort, Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who needs to confront his own second fiddling, forever having to withhold his frontis codpiece in the wake of his wife's preeminent chastity belt, always needing to keep his hands in his pockets to avoid any distracting gestures of emotional imbalance. The man is an adventurer for Hohenzollerns sake. A man's man, a lady's man, a real Teutonic Prince Charmer, a fierce polo player, a pilot in his own right. He could have been a contender. Sometimes he feels he fobbed off his testicles for a mess of privileged pottage. In one episode, he's having an acute middle-age crisis. He becomes obsessed with the moon landing, is riveted to the TV, a transformational display of humanity in process at its most intrepid. The courage, the nobility of spirit, risking one's life to explore the unknown and reveal it to the whole world. These hero astronauts don't just capture his imagination, they become his imagination. When offered the opportunity to actually meet with them in person, he awesomely anticipates a meeting of great masculine gravity-defying significance, which rapidly degenerates into a misshapen, mind-numbingly awkward failure of dialogue between a critically middle-aged pomp and circumstance and three uncompostably infantile automatons, overwhelmed by a common cold and more overawed by their palatial surrounding and royal host than any interactions with space and another planet. He asked them what must have been going on in their minds out there, beyond any previous beyond. And they look at him like schoolboys just asked to explain quantum physics in less than 3 sentences. What? Nothing. They didn't have time to think about anything up there. Just did what they were told to by home base, Ground Central, Mama Cass and Papa Von Braun. What they'd been trained to do. Press all the right buttons at the right times. Check, recheck the gauges, follow the script to the last semicolon, to a commanding punchline. They nailed it. The eagle has landed. They undoubtedly never reflected on which eagle this was, given that NASA was being run by an ex-Nazi. But that's another story. That could have blown the whole fucking series apart. Definitely low-budget independent media material, for now at least. Though it never ceases to amaze me what can be unrevealed in plain sight on TV. So many blockbuster series involving heroic, against-the-odds whistleblowers, ridiculed, ostracized, harassed, threatened, then eventually validated as bona fide heroes for exposing corruption and conspiracies at the highest levels. Switch channel to the news, they become paranoid nut jobs who need to get a real life, a real job, and stop being a menace to the social order. No wonder general humanity is so confused. It doesn't even want to think about it. Let somebody else figure it out, the professionals, the real producers, directors and scriptwriters of this narrative. We mere amateur mortals have enough on our daily plates dealing with landlords, the IRS, the MV and various other incorporated institutions to whom we are deeply indebted or indentured. Who are we to posit discrepancies in the script or in history and how it is meant to be played out to a triumphant finale? I'm sure it'll all come out in the wash. Just take me to my leader, be it Genghis Khan, the Pope, the Queen, or Lucifer himself. I will take the knee, pledge allegiance, and lick my own garbage off their boots if that's what it takes to keep me out of the psychiatric gulag. I'm sure the Queen wouldn't give it a second thought. Too busy asking the latest Prime Minister if he'll be so kind as to form a cabinet. Carpentry not in her job description, a skill she's never mastered, nor convinced she may ever need to do so. She has far more important and fascinating things to do, like going off to Balmoral so the Scots don't feel neglected. Some sporty culling to be done. She'd so much prefer to be a full-time horse breeder. She just loves horses and their dogs, of course. Still, duty calls. Royalty and nuns, too easy a target. Need some serious dramatising. Eventually, Lizzie will have to bite the family bullet and have some stern words with her son Andrew too. He seems to have been caught with his pants down, though that's not in the series yet. Young, though now not so young, Andy has been a real naughty prince and so indiscreet for protocol's sake. We need to at least lower his allowance and bar him from any public functionings, keep him out of the tabloids as much as is royally possible. What can one say? Some people just need to be above the law. Otherwise, who's going to know when the laws need changing and be able to do something about it? There's justice and there's the real world. I'm sure he couldn't have done anything Daddy Phil hasn't done, at least in his adventuring youth. The royal cats, boys will be boys. And speaking of boys, their lordly Uncle Mountbatten, how he got away with what he did all these years, a tribute to the power of bloodlines and self-discipline when not in the boudoir. Any normal person would have been tarred and feathered and strung up by their ankles in Blackpool Tower to be thrown coconuts at by all the pleb perverts who just couldn't get away with it. Fair dues. You either believe it or you don't. Apparently, it doesn't make much difference to the Crown what we believe, so long as we believe in them. In case you hadn't realised by now, I've been watching the BBC production of The Crown, season 4 or 5, I'm not sure. I just jumped right in. I was recently co-gifted a flat-screen TV with a year's free subscription to Netflix. Before that, I was quite happy to settle for DVDs from the local library. Any network TV anathema for me since I left my parents' home many, many years ago. I'd sooner be strung up by the ankles, nose down on a pea-stained feather mattress in Blackpool Hall of Funny Mirrors than endure incessant commercials for softer soap and tougher stain removers. But given that my local library, live music bars and any flesh-embodied theatrics went on indefinite quarantined hiatus, I finally succumbed to thumbing and plumbing through net-afflicted options for entertainment and distraction. It's a fucking bottomless pit. Feels like somebody's been stockpiling all these products for years for just such a mandatedly isolate, limitedly congregation, digitally exploding occasion as we're now going through. The adult Boy Scouts of America no doubt be prepared, even if there's a nightmare going on out there. In here, the dream lives on. You're about to experience something you've never experienced before. And though it may seem unnatural at first, trust me, after a while it'll just be second nature, or previous nature, obviously proven unable to take care of itself. If you can't trust your betters, who can you trust? I believe that's a direct quote from Socrates. You ever heard of Socrates? He was a really wise Greek motherfucker who really knew his mashed potatoes from indigestible root crop. Anyway, I watched The Crown about the British royal family. Being English, I felt obliged. And I can now confirm with absolutely mediated certainty that they are not lizards. No matter Princess Anne scriptedly refers to them as such. She was joking for David Icke's sake. If she wasn't, this would be sci-fi. It's not sci-fi. It's documentary. Well, it's not documentary, really, because they're actors playing out a documentary. It's a simulation, a historical reenactment. Maybe designed in part to convince us they're not fucking lizards. It's a double bluff by Princess Anne to convince us they are no more lizards than we are. And I don't think I am. At least I haven't twigged or tapped it in the mirror yet. Though we all know there's a reptilian in our brains somewhere, waiting to pounce in moments of stress or danger. So David Icke is not totally off the wall, just hanging there somewhat skewed and wonky, disturbing any clarity of perspective. Bit like Picasso, only he's not Spanish, and he's never had his own show in the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art, which must tell us something about his credibility, if not his inability to speak Spanish, or not be classified as not a little bit skewed and wonky. He doesn't even know there's a deadly virus going around, and if he's not careful, he may soon die, agonizingly of his own incredulity. That should teach him a lesson about refusing to suspend his disbelief. Though, of course, he'd still be up there, or down there, or somewhere in space, trying to convince Pablo's ghost he's not really happening, or if he is, he's not Pablo anymore, just another spatial, discriminately undiscriminating, ongoing frequency of ongoing consciousness, possibly prepping himself for reanimation as Winnie the Pooh. Who knows? Who cares? Que pasa? Do they have Spaniards, foreign languages, art galleries, and cartoons in space? But back to the real world on Netflix. And suspect professionals who can shift your perception of historical accuracy with a knowing wink, a gaslighting smile, a point of view provoking grimace, a cajoling nudge, or a pondering long shot on a silhouetted figure in gathering gloom lighting. Don't be afraid of the dark. It's only the wind. You're with me, and I'm kind. And so polishedly, professionally produced. Must be the Queen, after all. I was getting worried there for a minute. Talk about high stakes and cliff-hanging slips of the tongue twisters, warming up your vocal cords for publicly projected articulacy. You either believe in deadly viruses or you don't. You either believe in the scientifically debunked germ theory or you don't. Obviously, the Rockefellers did, or at least realized it was something they could manufacture another fortune out of oil-based pharmaceuticals. There's a fine line between greed and ambition, and an even refinery line between wealth and power. If nature's not up for the job, it just giveth and taketh away, and nobody profiteth. What a waste of ambition. Failure of vision. Just keeps going round and round and round at the mercy of its own nature. Human beings were not given a brain for nothing. Wheels of fire, I say. Wheels of fire. Wheels and fire blazing a trail through the uncivilized wilderness. The Industrial Revolution, without which Charles Dickens would have been just another coal miner. The Enlightenment, without which Nietzsche would have been just another syphilitic wacko who couldn't get his practical shit together. The printing press, without which we would never have heard of Marquis de Sade. At least he never got published. A Man on the Moon. Otherwise, lunacy would have remained but a dream. Technology and pharmaceuticals, solution, problem, reaction. We're on our way to Mars. Unlike Webster's dictionary, we're Mars bar bound. In case things don't work out here quite as we expected. Who are we? Well, if we're not you, you need to get your ass in gear. Get with the program and make it happen. Stop waiting for Mighty Mouse to come and save the fucking world from itself. Because if you're not we, you've only yourself to blame. Did we not give you a smartphone? Google it. You want answers? Google it. Intelligence may seem artificial to you now, but stick with it. It'll soon be second nature. As we said before, simply not good enough. Our first nature. If the pandemic is not real, then neither are you. That should give you pause for future thoughtlessness. There's a care in the world. Does God give you that? To have faith in a flawed God? What kind of fucking faith is that? May as well believe in your next door neighbour. Either way, there's some really deadly shit and composting going on. If you believe it's really a deadly violence, we're living in a global hospital ward in which the medics rule the roost. If you don't believe it, we're living in a global asylum in which the lunatics and psychopaths, technocrats and media moguls rule the roost. Pandemic or plandemic. Haven't heard if the Queen's got an opinion on this. Maybe she just has faith Netflix is going to sort it out for her. The ending's already been decided. It's just a matter of getting there before the audience twigs to the twist in the bloodline tale. She does seem to be hiding out at the moment, till she's been told it's safe to come out. Tell us the war's over. The war's over. Order has been restored. When the new normal has been fully normalised, and finally the royal family can reappear on the balcony as their true selves, the crowds cheering and waving their little flags because these lizards look so fucking cute. David Icke in the background in chains beaming valedictoriously. He's either on his way to some Martian gulag or he's been made viceroy of the planet Wise Wonk, where all conspirators will be theoretically transported. I'm a rambling man. Back to the Queen, the crown, and our common faith in Netflix and royalty's stoic flexibility on all issues but their own. Dutifully masked and quarantined in her palatial bubble wrappings, dutifully supporting her faux democratically elected government's diktats and fretting over the hardship her subjects are going through, the poor fuckers, at the same time glued to the TV, enchantedly watching her family's struggles, triumphs, and all too human foibles dramatically playing themselves out in expertly polished, artifacted proxy as she awaits advice from her own superiors that she can now shed the masquerade. All that PR posturing no longer necessary, the gloves are off. And the master race need make no more exhaustingly brain-racking concessions to keep their fickle and oversensitive subject. What a fucking relief. Now this world knows exactly where it stands. We gaveth, now we shall taketh away. All you delusions of any personal, purposeful grandeur, constitutional rights, national sovereignty, or cultural cohesion even within your own community, disassembled, muzzled, zoomed, and pixelated into digital recollections of an ancient bygone age that went viral on itself, internally imploded, running on too many antiseptic fumes and disinfecting fairy liquids. It ran out of breath and required a complete overhaul just to stand upright. We wrote the script. We devised the through line. we get to decide how it ends up. Let's face it, if it wasn't for us, you'd still be living in caves, travelling by grapevine and dining on random root crop. Just look at you now, on Netflix or Skype, of course. Does a gardener not prune his trees, pull out the weeds and cultivate only the hardiest, most succulent of his crop, pluck the lower-hanging fruit? Does a farmer not breed from the sturdiest of his livestock, cull the herd when needed, and slaughter only the fattest calves, etc., etc., etc.? We do what we do, not because of the consequences. I think somebody very confused said that. I must confess, I've been highly anticipating the appearance of Jimmy Savile into the royal household. He was definitely up to his tricks by the time we landed on the moon, or not, if we did. Or we did not, or maybe we'd been up there for years, just decided it was time for some awe-inspiring morale boosting. Take people's minds off the Vietnam War and the Beatles and Yoko Ono. Anything is possible. Ask Jimmy Savile. Can't wait to catch him skulking amid the background scenery, to add some real frisson and historically contextual risibility to the dark secrets of the high and mighty. A scriptural challenge, to say the least, without blowing the whole fucking thing apart. How such eminence surround us as it is by such a plethora of advisors, security guides, protocol protectors, etc., could be so naively duped and seduced unawares into his predatory web. He hasn't turned up yet, but we live in hope. It could be a career-defining role for any actor on the supportive outlines of immediate household name and fame recognition. Certainly was for Jimmy Savile, iconic. This straw-blonde, mopped-up, cigar-sucking, lantern-jawed, eccentric but relentlessly chirpy and charitably self-assertive disc jockey, scion of the Yorkshire coal mines, become TV personality who could fix it for any kid to have their dream come true before the eyes of the nation while their nightmares are being played out backstage. He finishes up hobgoblin nobbing with the House of Windsor like he was back in Harry Ramsbottom's fish and chip shop after a night in the local boozer getting plastered on Tadcaster nut brown ale. Then he's made a Sir, a Knight, Sir Jimmy, Knight of the Realm. He was such a skinny, obnoxious, attention-seeking kid. Who would ever have thought he was a pederast and a necrophiliac? Well, apparently a lot of people did, but for whatever reason felt disinclined to mention it. Let it slide as just malicious gossip. Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols didn't. He mentioned it, but he was a fucking foul-mouthed anarchist young punk who needed a good spanking, so that carried about as much weight with a generally civic populace as crying fire in an already burned-out building. Maybe the BBC is saving up for his own series. Jimmy Savile, not Johnny Rotten. The man that got away with it. Promo, byline, every depravity a human being wouldn't want to imagine. Anything that tickled his feral fancies. Makes Hannibal Lecter seem like some sophomoric wannabe with a seriously fatal flaw, because he didn't fucking get away with it. Finished up muzzled and solitary and in chains. Ring any bells? Though he could still scare the shit out of anybody not social distancing, but wasn't he overkill fictional anyway? So I guess there's no real comparison. No mention he was a kiddie or corpse fucker. The cannibalisation, hey-ho, only in the movies. May as well believe in spirit cooking. Some people just want to imagine the worst. Bring on the pizza and we'll slice it up together. I'll take the blue-eyed blonde with pepperoni. The wizard of his own id. The life and times of Sir Jimmy Savile. Pervert and procurer for the rich and famous, a man of many predilections, parental warning, some nudity, some foul language, and some smoking. Episode 1. Young Jimmy feels his soul's oats cooking down in the coal pit. How it all began. Born and raised amid the grime and grits of working-class northern England. One day, he's called upon to join a rescue team. There's been a cave-in down the mine, several trapped Collier's in the final throes of suffocation. Our young hero cradles one of the men in his arms as the rapidly deceasing Collier pleads a terminal request. Please, after I die, I need you to fuck me in the ass. Please, trust me, I really need this. It'll ease my departed spirit to know I've left this fucked up world in which I spent my whole damn bleeding life with barely a sweat-stained pot to piss in, and knowing it was only going to get worse, at least by the time it did, I'll know I was already dead. He died, and young Jim fixed it for his dying wish to come true. No pain, everybody gained, and that changed Jimmy's whole outlook on life forever. People just need to be touched, even after they're dead, in places and ways they've never previously imagined they wouldn't die of shame from. And the rest is his story, but only as yet as documentary. Nobody's apparently acting, said Jimmy, of course, who's playing himself. Meanwhile, in real simulation land on Netflix, I believe Diana is slated to turn up in the next season. That'll juice up the ratings. Curious if they'll have it juice up Charlie's forlorn libido, or does it just get a rueful soaking in the soap operatic slough of royal imperative? Having dealt with his heartbreakingly aborted romance with the younger, more cutely equinine Camilla, who dutifully but now somewhat reluctantly, having fallen for Charlie, consummates in marriage a long consummated, if frustratingly on-off relationship with Charlie's rival in romance, the dashing Parker Bowles. Extramarital, transient mating par for the royal course. No shock there in this day and age. No hints of inbreeding. The Queen, the one exception, of course. Poor Charlie cast adrift to await the love of his life's inevitable divorce, which must be at least one exhausting, if uncelibacy-inducing season away. There are some facts not even fiction can ignore, nor would it wish to ignore if it furthers the through line, sets up some anticipatory frissons of events to come, primers for cliffhanging opportunities as we await headlining stuff we may in fact remember, or at least have heard or read about. Should I be looking forward to Helena Bonham, Princess Margaret Carter, being given some more juicy melange au chaud, hot times in the royal loins tonight? If only because the actress is very, very good value for money. Or will the Crown opt to finale her from her sultry negligee post-suicidal attempting bed, sagely tutoring the Queen on her cracks, then abandon her as a regal lost cause, modestly deleting any future sexual rampagings through London's gangster rough trade on her hideaway island mystique? Best to just keep the poor woman out of the tabloids as much as is royally possible. Meanwhile, our Greekly unsocratic and Mephistopheles Prince Philip should have some serious slitty-eyed FOMO to answer for, or not. Am I not entitled to my opinion? Is it not a fact about these Orientals? Is everybody else blind? As for the Queen Mother, so far a bit of a thankless role. Well, I've got no idea what the fuck she was getting up to anyway, so I'd say Netflix's absolute license to imaginatively explore, should they choose to do so. I'm sure she has something to say about that blonde uppity broodmare. Who with Charlie? Are you following the plot? Who with Charlie, I imagine, will undoubtedly take centre stage next season. Am I not entitled to my imagination? I suspect Charlie will finally embrace royal realpolitik and wed his young, picturesque Lady Spencer Tracy, who is too young as yet to suspect anything but the mildest of shenanigans behind the bloodline fairy tale. I'd say becoming a mother to the heir of the British throne, no less, will definitely rattle a few bats in her neurotically evolving belfry, as she really starts hugging the regal limelight, if for no other reason than some public collateral should the Crown get too much disenchanted of her eating and divulging to the press disorder and decide, with 2 sons in the pot, it's time she retreats to pinochle with her grandmother-in-law. Otherwise she may have to be eliminated altogether. Of course, as we all know, she's no player of pinochle. Duly separated, then divorced from her uncharming tampon-obsessed prince, starts knocking off and getting impregnated by a non-white, non-Christian Muslim. And yes, there really are such things. Virtue signalling somewhat incriminatingly about all these nasty, inhumane landmines and being less than publicly discreet with her diary jottings. They have no choice but to eliminate it from both the series and the Crown. More than a few questions are being offered, more than a few undesired answers. Will they get away with it? You're having a laugh, they already have. A car crash, which she actually predicted in one of her jottings. The woman had obviously become a prophetess while becoming mentally unstable. And if the proof is in the royal pudding, there are whole legions of sworn allegiances in MI5, MI6 and all up the M62 to the North Pole, back down south to Portland Down, across the Atlantic, far beyond the pale faces of Westminster, who will swear with an inch of their life that the driver was a drunk Indian and it was a tragic accident. I mean, why else would he go the long way round and through a totally counterproductive tunnel unless he was tipsy, wine-sodden, dazzled by Dice diamonds and the lights of gay Paris? A ritual assassination of the moon goddess. You having a laugh, David? I've heard funnier jokes in the audio version of the Old English Dictionary. Why did the ambulance not go to the nearest hospital? Because the ETs were working on commission, a bit like tour guides. But wait, could it be simple coincidence that emergency technicians go by the same monogram moniker as aliens? And both appear when humanity's in crisis. Never let a crisis go to waste. It does make me laugh sometimes. Information and fascination, with the occasional tongue-in-cheeky grin. Can't argue with that. It's act like he spent most of his adult life rewriting War and Peace as a cosmic documentary for rueful illiterates. I bow to his encyclopedic body of research and presentational articulacy, though remaining upright at the same time. I saw him live in concert a few years back in Dublin. 4-5 hours he rumbled on, and I never once squirmed in my seat or wished he'd just get to the fucking point. I'd take my hat off. Just need to keep my hair on. On a personal note, another personal note, I was at this party on the night the news broke about Diana's death. A Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright and the Yale-connected director of a nationally recognised repertory theatre were there. I say that because they were apparently intelligent people, but they laughed me out of the room when I insisted poor Di was assassinated. I knew it. I didn't need proof. I just knew it in my English bones. It was so fucking obvious, hardly a shock. They indulged me a few minutes to say my piece, as I was English, but in the end, there was no excuse. I was obviously a nut job. Who was that guy anyway? Some kind of conspiracy theorist? We should report him to the CIA. They'll know what we're talking about. He probably thinks JFK, the Gulf of Tonkin, Bobby, Martin, even Sam Cooke and Alfalfa were set up jobs too. Please, pass the canapes. Any more of that sparkling Beaujolais? Another whistleblower bites the dust. You know, I've worked in and with various theatre companies, often my own, most striving but never achieving professional status, never polished enough, certainly never funded or promoted enough. And you either believe it or you don't, but it was never something I particularly aspired to. If it happened, it would need to happen through a forcefulness not emanating out of me. I had no love for art as a business. I had no love for business as a business or art as an industry. Sounds like a virtue signalling or sour grape cliche, but I just wanted to free myself of inhibition, I suppose, through language and voice. I could fly, float, sink, or swim. I preferred it raw, forever in process, flesh and blood, human to the nth degree. As soon as you start polishing reality out of its own existence, you need to suspend your belief that your own life really exists. You could have a Broadway hit show or a Netflix historical reenactment commission, but you need to be very wary of any assertions of poetic truth, like glossy magazines. Promote too much polish and perfection, could become weaponized myths serving only the producers and investment bankers with an excess of profit and serving up the masses with an excess dosage of inferiority complex, seducing us into places we no longer know we didn't really want to go there in the first place. But if that's what the world keeps demanding we should be striving towards, we should at least give it a go. I mean, you're already selling your soul into the pyramid scheme, let's face it, as soon as you sign up for a credit card. Which brings me back to the royal family. The crown at the top of the pyramid, apparently. Alchemy at its finest, turning base flesh and blood into a masterclass, and indebtedness into a badge of honour. Let's say, as soon as you were born... I ramble, I'm a rambling man, a bit like Steve Martin without a banjo and not as funny. I never claimed to be a comedian, though I can make myself laugh. Where am I? Where was I? Let's say, as soon as you're born, barely out of the womb, you were asked to sign a contract, pledging undying allegiance and service to your masters, no questions asked, no complaining allowed for the rest of your life. In exchange, you'll be given your own little place to live, regular food credits and a clothing allowance. Assigned a job your masters decide you are most suited to. No loopholes, no small print, straightforward. Upfront transaction, play your cards right. We could decide to make you president. Who knows? You could finish up with a knighthood in the British House of Lords, snoozing alongside the ghost of Sir Jimmy Savile. Anything is possible. So if you'll just sign on the undotted line, give us a thumbprint and a DNA swab, we'll have your life underway before you can say Jiminy Cricket twice backwards. And if I don't sign, well, you may finish up wishing you'd never been born in the first place. Your choice. And will I get a smartphone and a free subscription to Netflix? How do you keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris Hilton? Who the fuck is Paris Hilton? Sorry, we've moved on. Kim Kardashian, Miley Cyrus, Taylor. Who the fuck is so glamorously au current with kids these days? They slit their wrists because they just didn't feel like they were up to snuff. Of course, as anybody knows, though of course nobody is really anybody, just to somebody else who obviously doesn't know everybody, the crown isn't the crown at all. Not as we commoners think, anyway. It isn't the House of Windsor. It's the City of London, a sovereign statement in its own right. At the head of the snake, back to the reptiles, keep popping up all over the place. The Freemasonic cabal of banksters, financiers, on their mission to buy up the whole fucking world. You either believe it or you don't. Whenever the Queen is summoned to the City of London, she must bow to its mayor and trundle off in his wake wherever he may lead, to give her a heads up what the next move may be, or simply told to keep doing what she does best, not crack, or the whole thing will fall apart. I only learned about this recently, though I actually worked, on a personal note, in the City of London in my youth. As a temp cleric or messenger boy. I preferred messenger boy because I got to ride around in taxis and stay on the move. Never once did I know what the message was. I didn't peek. I knew my place in the peaking order. There are 8 powerful families, descended from the black nobility of Venice. White guys, I presume, though probably more tan than most English. The Knights Templar, the original white supremacists. This is apparently a conspiratorial fact. Neither theory nor fancy, but what the fuck would I know? Don't listen to me. Listen to this guy, Dean Henderson. I listen to him. Currently, it seems he's in or on retreat somewhere in the Ozarks, getting as far off the grid as possible. But he delivers an informed articulacy of rant unlike few I've ever heard. Resonates a message. I can feel the truth of it in my bones. I can see it, credit carding, supermarketing all around the place, consumer madness feeding the beast, delivering the whole world into debt and virtual enslavement, science and intellect, the new divinity. We need to empty our mind out at regular intervals, Dean advises. Otherwise, we will never be able to think clearly. The House of Windsor, but one branch of the central octopus. In the tactical tentacle PR unit, these inbreeding motherfuckers go back a long way, enlightening even the Dark Ages at regular intervals with their evolving wizardry. if there are fallen angels in this world. They're bringing nature and humanity to its knees, ring any bells. A rose by any other name would still need its thorns. A bully by any other name would still need its horns. No less than a warrior needs a war, and a cat needs to be skinned at least 9 times before it accepts it might finally be fucking dead on its paws. We need to be very wary of naked cats in their final throes, and dramatis persona in their histrionic throes. Performers, actors, salaried scriptwriters, the moved and shaken shapeshifters, multi-trick ponies, in the payroll of profit and power-mongers. In these times when flesh and blood has become a toxic byword for avoiding contact, and the media become the sole paradigm for learning the truth of this world, the more wary we must become of suspending our disbelief in the pixelated lights of projections from a fucking screen, slogans on a virtual chalkboard, utterly erasable, replaceable, disposable, undebatable truths. The magic lantern sorcerers at work, the seducers, the recruiters, the predictive programmers, the behaviour modificators, the secret agents of trend and trope, the tyrants of truth, the military industrial entertainment and propaganda complex, no expense spared. Who owns the technological wherewithal, calls the shots, wizardry most potent, to make a point, to stir an emotion, to keep one absorbed, to keep one distracted, to send a message that this is truly the world you live in, and we defy you to create a better one with mere flesh and blood. We were not given a brain for nothing. At least some of us weren't. Most of us just need to give it a good washing. Just lie back, close your eyes, and relax. The density of mass credulity. Out of the cooking pot, straight into the firing line, out of the test tube, endlessly rocking. Will you just shut up and sit still for a minute? My mother is trying to think. My father is trying to figure out what my mother's trying to think. I cannot prove I wasn't artificially inseminated. I can't prove my mother wasn't a test tube. Appropriate memory deletions par for the brainwash. Maybe she just wore a full body mask. Being that they are now dead, I can't prove my parents ever really existed. In this age of Photoshop and digital enhancement, would it stand up in a court of law? Thank God nobody really gives a damn. I could ask my brother and sister, but they could also be implants. And besides, they couldn't prove it any more than I could. It will be our word against the Grim Reaper, who might swear in a host of tombstones and potted plants that he has no recollection. Given the number of corpses he deals with on a daily basis, who's about to challenge him on this point? I mean, how is he supposed to remember everybody's little anybody? Besides, he's been banned from testifying in a court of law on the grounds he has nobody to represent him. Just wait till your synthetic skin starts peeling off. That should give you a clue. It's all in your mind. Even your flesh and blood. Let's face it, most people finish up back in the laboratory being switched off and replaced by a shiny new state-of-the-art model. Where do you think Vogue or Cosmopolitan gets all its cover girls from? The back streets of Naples? Or the grooming gangs of Weston-super-Mare? We need to deal with the material we're given. Whatever it is, shoes and socks, a push bike, a motor car. I've never invented anything my whole life. I've lived my whole life on the backs of so many somebodies so much smarter than I am. I must owe somebody something, you ungrateful sod. And now you stand there in your J. Crew cast-offs and your LL Bean rejects, presuming to scoff and turn your nose up at the smartest thing somebody else has ever invented. A global population that does exactly what it's told. But you couldn't do that. We're not waiting around till you decide to get with the program. Who the fuck are you anyway, for Steven Spielberg's sake? You're not even on the cast list. You failed the audition. You play no parts in The Crown. Hypocrite, lecturer, mon sewage, mon frère, Jacques. You need to update your resume. But I used to be, so didn't we all? Must count for something. Still think you're up for the Queen? No transphobia on this channel. The Queen, the actual Queen, definitely seems to be running on artificial intelligence. So much inhuman, superhuman withholding of any independent or commonsensical thought or emotionally exuberant gesticulation. already so aware she's been under surveillance all her life, if not by Big Brother, by the all-seeing eyeballs of history, lineage, privilege, tutelage, mass carnage, all the things that led her to where she is now. On Netflix, not the actual Queen. The plot thickens, or is it just the gel in her hair? Of course, she doesn't have a Big Brother. Neither of them do, actual or superactual. If she had, she wouldn't have become Queen in the first place. Like her sister Maggie, she would have been cast to the wind-strewn dust heap of thwarted potential. Should I sympathise? I could have been somebody. Now there's a conundrum could stump a sphinx. As soon as you start feeling you're nobody, the battle's already lost. Because nobody feels shame, guilt, failure and helplessness like nobody does. It's our common humanity in process. If only everybody would just admit to it, anybody who knows there's somebody could uncommonly rule the fucking world. I walk the streets of the city, and I can't shake the feeling. All these nobodies actually feel like they're somebody, so long as they're dutifully wearing their masks and taking care of each other by staying away from each other, making this world a safer place to recover from itself. Because, let's face it, humanity was fucked up well before this shit happened. The accumulation since the emergent spider first seduced the first flies onto the fringes of its web with chocolate bars and eye candy, Flash Gordon and Greta Garbo. She wants to be alone. She's been irrelevant these days. All you have to do is watch a few series on Netflix. You realise how fucking fucked up humanity is. Riddled with psychopathic serial killers, rapists, child molesters, corrupt cops, corrupt politicians, junkies, shopaholics, out-of-control hoarders of anything and everything, violence, division, deceit, greed, Jimmy Savile, Ted Heath, Jeffrey Epstein, the Clinton gang, Billy Gates, Elon Muscovich, well, maybe not Jimmy Fallon, he seems harmless enough, etc., etc. takes the plague to no one. The sorcerer's apprentice. There's a sequence in the animated Disney movie, Sword in the Stone, where a wizard and a witch meet in the forest for a duel to the death. After all manner of shape-shifting thrust and parry weaponizations, the wizard Merlin has a brainwave, a spark of genius, transforms himself into a germ, a virus, and the ugly, warty old hag has no parry for that. She dies an agonizingly cartoonish death. But she's an ugly, warty old hag anyway, so it's good riddance to unpicturesque rubbish. The audience rise from their feet to applaud, the children all abeam, the parents smiling along with them, because we all knew from the start of the movie who the good guy is. Start anthropomorphizing that child-targeted tidbit, we might discover some predictive programming. Or am I just stretching my imagination too much to get it out of my brain? Somebody seemed to have an insight with future practical application, though, of course, at the time, nobody in the audience probably gave it a first, never mind a second thought. On a personal note, I had this vision the other day. I felt like I was seeing things. I was driving into the city. I see this female figure striding along the sidewalk, heading out of the city. A young woman, tall and slim, but sturdily defiant, barefoot, bare-legged, light brown hair coiled up in a bun, stray wisps curling about a handsome, steady-lipped face, quite majestic, wearing a low-cut, bosom-hugging bodice with a long-tailed skirt highlighting those long, bare legs to fairy-tale proportions, carrying no purse, no baggage. I wanted to look twice, as if I couldn't believe my eyes, but the traffic urged me on. So I shrugged it off with an incredulous smile, just another urban eccentric, wittingly or otherwise, risking herself becoming a traffic hazard. And I went about my brief business, then drove back home on the highway, 10 miles or so, about 15 minutes. The whole trip, 30 to 45 minutes, turn off onto a back road through my hometown to make a stop at the bank, and there she was, still striding along, barefoot, bare-legged, long-tailed, majestic. That was a hell of a walk. presumably not on the highway. I considered the route she might have taken and what this might mean in some larger scheme of things. I also seriously considered pulling to the side, approaching her and expressing my incredulity and amazement. How the fuck did you get here this fast? Am I missing something? But I decided that would be somewhat self-indulgent, invasive, and interruptive to disturb her obvious determination to get wherever she was going without breaking an unmajestic sweat. So don't nobody tell me there's not some seriously weird shit going on in this world. You know, I've been haunted lately a lot by psychic phenomena in my own mind, unreasonably convinced that there is somebody in my immediate circle of friends and acquaintances who knows exactly where, when, and in what manner I will die. And they're not telling me, but they know it in their bones. Perhaps their bones are not telling them with sufficient conviction they feel obliged to give me a heads up. Perhaps they know themselves are meant to be complicit in my passing. Perhaps I've been watching too much fucking Netflix, but I have no doubt there is wizardry and witchery in this world, both benign and benevolent. It could mean nothing or something or everything. There's an old Eskimo folk tale about this guy who gets struck by lightning, becomes a great healer. His reputation spreads far and wide. The secret of his healing powers is to eat any sick person's shit. Not his favourite food in the world, he just knows he has to do it. No matter how bad it tastes or how long he needs to taste it. It's his calling. Of course, eventually it makes him sick. He's eaten so much shit. He's lying on his deathbed when this guy turns up who'd just been struck by lightning. And he's become a big fan, wants to learn from the best. Tell me, my guru, what I must do to heal this world. Thank the Great Spirit, says the dying man, because he wasn't ready to die just yet. You want to know my secret? And he points to the bedpan at the foot of his bed. You know what you have to do. I've already made you some breakfast. And the healing beat goes on, so long as there are people in this world prepared to eat up somebody else's shit. Okay, I guess this is my tribute to all the hardy souls prepared to wallow through all the shit going on in this world and try to cure its sickness, or at least explain it. Being struck by lightning, undoubtedly a metaphor for waking up with freshly open eyes, to clearly recognize sick shit when it's being fed to you in great dollops of mediated disinformation, factual fancies, and love songs that can break the heart while cyanide is being slipped in between the cracks. Back to David Icke, 'cause perversely enough, it was the green fucking lizards first caught my attention and my imagination. I could clearly see, in the expansive context he so articulately laid out, I knew in my bones, you need to go way beyond the BBC or CNN or any other production so massively financed they can polish off personal existence altogether, just a pawn in their game, whoever they are, human, inhuman, superhuman, either way. If you're not with them at the top of the pyramid, you're far enough below. They don't give a fuck if you live or die, well or otherwise. We live in a top-up, bottom-down culture. If you're not going up, you must be going down. If you're not going anywhere, you must be going nowhere. At best, we are mediocre, readily reward for dependence on a global state of governance, now openly proclaiming its sole faith in science and technocracy, its ace in the hole, fear. Fear of death, fear of growing old, going blind, losing all your teeth. You bite, out of control, helpless, in pain, at the mercy of nature's mercilessness. Humanity, a failed organism. But science and technology can take care of that. We can take care of that here at Biotech United. We've been working towards this for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Now our time has come. Don't be afraid of the dark. It's only the wind. Nothing will harm you. You're with us. And we're kinder than you think, really. You either believe it or you don't. Meanwhile, long live the crown, the queen, whoever, whatever, in this land of hope and glory. No longer just on Netflix. What will you miss, really? Your mind? Let's face it, once you've lost it, you'll never really miss it. Maybe that's the message I was delivering in the city of London. I should have peeked